the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Coming to you live from the teenage bedroom of teenage Groot. It's the Worldview Media Podcast.
Woo! Hooray!
Part of the Reconstructionist Radio Network, the one-stop audio shop for all your dominionizing needs.
Ah, yes.
And I nailed it that time.
It only took you one take.
That anybody knows. Okay, so I'm your host, Gordon Runyon, and with
I'm
me...
his wife, Joyce.
Well, there you go. I was going to introduce her, but she said it. How are you, Mom? Doing all right?
Doing all right.
And also we have middle daughter Jordan with us. Hello.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yes.
Okay, so in this first segment, what we like to do is give some overall impressions, and if there's something in particular that we liked a lot about the movie or things that we don't think worked as well, this first segment is the time to speak on those things.
I see.
Hey, who wants to go first? Jordan, you got anything?
Well, I thought it was real funny. I thought that it was nice to have a lot of focus on the characters and stuff and kind of learn more about everybody, and I liked all that stuff. Little baby Groot, oh man.
He kind of stole the show.
Yeah, he's a good one. I think I like baby Groot more than I like original adult Groot from the first movie.
Oh yeah, he's way cuter.
He's way more fun to watch on screen.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Probably wasn't voiced by Vin Diesel in this movie.
He was.
Really?
Yeah.
Vin Diesel voiced Baby Groot?
Yep. Were you it was right there in the credits.
Wow, I missed
And we
that.
even watched it.
Vin Diesel
They must
as
have
Baby
fed him
Groot.
helium or something.
He's just a very committed actor.
I guess. All right. Well, Mom, do you have anything in particular that you liked about it, or?
I like the characters. I thought there were some problems with some of the plots, maybe not as hearty as they could have been. I really didn't care for a lot of the music that they had in Volume 2. I don't know where they were finding this. I don't know who listened to it. If you did, let me know, because I was unfamiliar with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think this soundtrack will sell as well as the first one.
Yeah, the first one was so good. And I feel like it had more songs that people just knew already, you know?
Yeah.
And this one, like a new song would come on and I'd be like, all right then. I don't know.
I don't really like this song. Yeah.
Who is this? Was this really from then? Yeah. So, yeah, I think probably the music, I don't know, did they just knock it out of the park the first time and there was nothing left from that?
They used all the good music from that whole
There was only 12
period.
songs, you know, I don't know.
Ah, well.
Some of it was familiar, but I just think the quality was,
Not quite as good.
yeah,
Yeah.
lesser
I agree with
known,
that.
at least to me.
So the first movie seemed like it's the space comic book adventure with a lot of comedy thrown in, and
Yeah.
kind of seemed like this was more a comedy with some space adventure stuff thrown in. It seemed like they really went heavy on the comedy aspect, and for me, most of it worked. I thought it was a funny movie.
Yeah, it was real funny, I thought. I was laughing the whole time.
Maybe they had
Yeah.
so much comedy because there was so much heartache.
Well, it is definitely a more emotional plot than the first one. So that amount of comedy, and we talked about that in my screenwriting class, how you gotta balance stuff. And if you make something really funny, then those poignant moments will be even more poignant because it was just funny, and what are you doing? You're killing me, and
Right.
that kind of
You're
thing.
really killing me.
Well, you're probably right about that. There was a lot of kind of deep stuff going on character-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom mentioned that she didn't like all of the plot points, and I think you're talking about the main plot with the bad guy and his plan to destroy the galaxy. That
Yeah.
wasn't really all that great.
Yeah. Well, and then you had the two different bad guys, or maybe it was three, because the Guardians were kind of bad, and then the people they were helping had to go bad because they went bad, and then there's the guy who comes to save them, but wait, is he bad? I think he is.
Right. So most of the subplots were very character driven, and I kind of liked all those.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I didn't think the main threat plot was all that strong.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It was more about the relationship stuff that happened, and meanwhile you have to deal with this other big, like, galaxy threat. But that's not the point of the movie, you know, like,
Yeah.
they have to save the galaxy, but it's like the background thing to, like, they have to work out all their actual, like, issues.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and then the way they save the galaxy is not the way you think it is from the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that little twist in there as well that kind of changes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I felt like there were some neat things, like the whole theory that now we run into this race that when they're waging war in outer space, it's all with kind
Remote.
of drones.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're playing video games and
Yeah.
stuff.
Which is interesting, but I think we're really heading toward completely unmanned warfare. And if you have the ships that can go out and do that, why not just have them target the enemies? And
Well, I think that's the thing about, like, how you can't program a machine to have the human instinct and reaction and stuff, and, like,
well,
that's a thing that people are, like, always debating about with these unmanned things is, can you program a computer to
Hit the target.
do well? It can hit the target, but is it gonna think the way that a human pilot would think if they came across this situation and were like, oh, I could actually do this thing, and that might be more successful than what is the obvious thing.
yeah. Well, I
Talking
still
about a
think
human disobeying a direct order.
we're
No,
not
I mean, like, being creative about how you solve a
and
problem.
improvising in the moment.
Improvision.
But I still think that's the way we're headed. Artificial intelligence and all that. But it was kind of cool. You got all these pilots that are just in their, like, video game.
Yeah, like an
Bubble.
arcade thing. That was
Yeah.
kind of fun, I
It looks
thought.
comfy though.
Yeah. And I liked how they would all kind of cheer for each other, like when it was down to that one last guy,
Right.
and they're all huddled up there, and then he gets blown up, and darn.
Well, some of my favorite bits of the movie, I really thought the extra Drax stuff was all good, and I was a little bit surprised. I'm not terribly familiar with Batista, but I really thought he did a good job in terms of just handling the extra workload and all that.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. I liked all the interactions that he had with that mantis.
Oh, right. Right.
About his, like, being all frank and just
Yeah, you're hideous. Right.
and just
She
really
was good
rude.
with it,
And she just like, okay.
That's nice. Thank you.
The funniest part of the movie for me, though, was Rocket making fun of Taserface. that was
was
a
a
really
good
funny
one.
scene. I thought really good.
Oh man, that's so funny. And then Taserface being all still trying to
He's still trying
Keep
to pull
on,
it off
yeah.
after that. Yeah,
Well, I guess you got to be careful when you give yourself your own nickname.
yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Doesn't ever work. You never get nicknamed something as cool as you would
Like
nickname
Big
yourself.
Shooter or
Right.
something.
Big Shooter.
oh boy,
Right. That didn't work.
didn't really catch on.
Well,
Okay.
you got to try though.
Anything else? Anything you liked or didn't like, or plot points or anything?
Well, it was nice to see. I think Jordan mentioned all the character, kind of more backstories about their past and
Oh, yeah.
why they're like they are now, and interacting with each other. And it's just, I really think it was more about the characters than,
Yeah, then the conflict.
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely.
And that was nice, and it worked. I think it worked. you
Yeah,
know.
I think so. Dad was saying about how it's like on Star Trek, when Star Trek is really good, you have the problem that's sort of the plot of the episode or the movie or whatever, and then, but that's not the real meat of the story. It's about the characters and them figuring out their own relationship stuff and about themselves and and how they are as a team and all this stuff. So that was cool.
Right. I actually think that's the secret sauce to why Harry Potter was so successful too. Everybody wants to pin it on magic or whatever, but I feel like the books would have been just as successful if it hadn't been magical, if it had just been these three friends at like a boarding school that was old and mysterious or something like that.
Right.
With mysteries to solve. I feel like it would have been just as interesting. Just the characters, I feel like, is what carried that series. Okay, we ready for a break then?
Yes.
Sounds to me like we are. So we'll have our break and then we'll talk more worldview issues.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit ReconstructionistRadio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back from the bedroom of teenage Groot and all the amazing posters he has on the walls.
Yeah.
And
Where did he get them?
Is that a farce scene?
It's lovely.
Or are they big red buttons?
wait, is that tree naked?
Groot. This is for another podcast.
Okay, so we're here to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and we want to look more at worldview-related themes and how those things are preached in the movie and what kind of messages are being relayed. So, Jordan, what do you have for us?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest themes that you kind of can see in the movie is this idea of like a reconciliation of people, like, you know.
Like, yes.
Well, like, you got Peter Quill and his father, Ego, who we meet in this movie. Mm-hmm. And can we talk about spoilers in this section?
Yeah, we are going to talk about spoilers. If you haven't seen it yet, tread on at your own risk.
Okay, well, and his father, Ego, who turns out to be bad, so that whole reconciliation thing doesn't work out. But, like, also, you see it with all these other characters, too, with Nebula and Gamora. They kind of are struggling to get something figured out, reconciling, and they don't quite get there, but they're on that. They're trying to get to that point, I feel like. And
right.
Well, I think they have a better understanding.
Yeah.
Of the other's perspective.
And then even other characters too, and like Peter and Yondu, mm-hmm. they come to a better understanding of each other, and they're able to reconcile. And then Yondu and the Ravagers, and Yondu and that his little sidekick guy who betrays him but then comes back, and they reconcile, and even Rocket with the rest of them at the end, because he'd been kind of a jerk in the beginning and now he feels bad, and they all have to, so
is
reconciliation.
Drax just like completely out of reconciliation stuff, or what's going on with him?
Well,
did he ever reconcile with somebody?
I don't
Maybe
think that he ever really had a...
They came to where they were.
Did he wind up being nice to Baby Groot, and Baby Groot had been kind of scared of him or something?
I don't remember that.
No, there was nothing like that.
I don't think so.
I was thinking that.
Well, Baby Groot doesn't dance in front of Drax,
Right.
but it's because he wants Drax to like him. And
Right.
Drax
doesn't
isn't
dance.
Drax isn't a dancer, and Groot
Right.
is like doesn't want to be somebody. He wants
Okay,
it,
I
wants
was
to
thinking
like
they
him.
maybe had a moment where they.
Well, he reached out and he wanted Drax to hold him, and at the end there with all the fireworks, and he did. So I guess
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Right,
I
that
guess
was
that's
it.
something.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking about. Okay, so what about the reconciliation? What's the message of the movie, do you think?
Well, I think. Well, I think in all of them, and all the reconciliations that we sort of see take place, like the first step, I feel like, is always that one or more of the characters always has to sort of admit that they've done something wrong to wreck what the relationship was before, and that they have to own up to that and try to make amends by, just like, hey, I know I did this thing and I'm sorry, and can you take me back, and all of this stuff.
Right.
And I feel like when it worked, it was a good thing to reconcile.
Well, the ones that I immediately think of are Nebula and Gamora, and how they didn't really get all the way to reconciliation, but they got to the point where now maybe they won't try to murder each other.
Right.
And
I
getting,
think that was really Nebula.
yeah, getting Nebula's backstory was really good. I thought it really fleshed out her character. She was just kind of a sociopathic murderer in the first movie.
Right.
A Terminator that couldn't be stopped,
Yeah.
And getting her backstory I thought was really helpful. But it's what you said there, where they both kind of had to admit that they didn't treat each other well growing up. They were in extreme circumstances and were kind of inwardly focused on their own survival and stuff like that. But
Well, but I think oftentimes with a family situation, everybody's perspective is different.
yeah,
And so could be the same family, the same environment, very similar circumstances, and your perspective may be completely different. And so there's always that, just because you're people.
right.
You see things differently, and you react differently to those things as well. So
Yeah, and so it takes some willingness to hear what the other person is saying, and yeah, so that's pretty biblical, isn't it? I think of Jacob and Esau reconciling, and
Right.
that's a really neat story in the Bible, and then even Jesus's instructions on church discipline. The goal is always reconciliation, where you, instead of just making a federal case out of it right away, you try to deal with things at the lowest possible level. If your brother offends you, or if you know that your brother has been offended by you, then the two of you try to work this out first, and with the goal of being reconciled.
well, and that was the case of it with the law as well. I mean, you went to the lower courts and people, and if that couldn't be resolved, then it went higher and higher up. And we live in a very litigious society where it's right away to the top, to the top.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's right. So I felt like that was the whole urging. Obviously, the movie's in favor of reconciliation.
Yeah, it's painted as a good thing when it's
Yeah.
accomplished.
That's right. So that's a really decent message coming out of Hollywood.
well, and you mentioned that Ego and
Peter.
Peter, I want to call him Phil.
Peter Quill. You're mixing his.
I'm blending him together. He's Phil. He still had to reconcile with this man who was his father.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have that reconciliation with the guy. Maybe he does in a way because he has to come to the conclusion that this relationship can't continue.
Yeah.
But he still has to work through all those things. Here's my dad suddenly, and then
He's
my
still
dad
gonna have
is-
to deal with
Yeah.
this new thing.
with this shocking information.
Yes.
That was
So-
one of the funny parts, I thought, where you could obviously tell that the writers knew that we were entering into an area that's been done to death in Hollywood.
Right, with the long lost father
Right.
and stuff.
And so they have to have Peter say at some point, you know, you're gone all this time and now you just want to come back and be my dad. And it actually has that dopey scene where they're actually playing catch.
I
and
know.
stuff.
Oh man, once he like made that little glue ball and tossed it to him, I was like, oh, they're gonna play catch.
Here we go.
And then they did.
And they both caught it.
I
which
know,
was
they were
impressed
good.
with.
They were doing good.
Well, to me, I like that when a movie is self-aware enough to know when it's being stupid. And,
Yeah, that it doesn't take itself too seriously.
yeah. I feel like that's been the downfall of every DC movie I've seen in years.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's really true.
Yeah.
They
They
just
can't laugh
Yeah.
at themselves or at anything. And
because
yeah.
it's a comic book.
Right.
This is it's still kids stuff, you know.
That's
Really,
right.
you can't like okay, you can make it kind of gritty and stuff, but
I mean, the whole setting, the whole concept of a superhero movie is ridiculousness.
Yeah.
And yeah. Well, anyway, that's off the beaten path. So. All right, so we talked about reconciliation. Any other major themes? What do
Well,
feel
you
like?
got to look at family in here because you have
Family's a big issue in this movie.
The long lost dad coming and why'd you find me now after all this time?
and the two sisters.
Yep. And then you have Gamora's offended because he's like spending all this time with his dad and he says, well, I found my family. He said, well, I thought you already found your family. So, you know, she was feeling a little cheated and robbed of her status because that was the whole end of the last movie. You know, these are my people, this is my crew, these are my homies.
Oh,
So,
my.
and then, you know, that changed but did it change or did it go back? And then I think even with Drax, I was impressed with when he was thinking about his family and Mantis, who is the empath. You know, and he's just sitting there looking like Drax, very unexpressive, and yet, you know, she reaches out and touches him, and she's just broken down and crying, and because he's remembering everything that he lost with his family. So
Yeah.
Well, and then we talked a little bit before about the issue of. I don't think that this movie meant anything evil by it, but I think Hollywood in general and the culture in general is kind of really big on this idea that family is just whoever you're close to, and and you know, I don't have a huge big issue with that. It's just that, you know, because the Bible does say there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, and we've all experienced Christian fellowship with people that we're not related to, and yet it's sometimes stronger than bonds that we might have with people we are related to, and so I get that, and I get that natural families are not the be-all and end-all of everything, but Marxism as a philosophy is all about eliminating family, and family is in the crosshairs of real Marxists, and they're trying everything they can do to get rid of it. And one of the easy ways to get rid of family is just to kind of define it out of existence. And so I do understand about people you feel like they're family and stuff, but I don't think we can afford to let go of the biblical idea that families have to do with covenants. You're either in that family covenant through marriage and birth, or by the covenantal act of adoption. And so there really is a definition of what family is. And I think we maybe throw the term around pretty loosely.
well, I think I can agree with you that it is a covenant relationship, but you can have parents that break that covenant and that they're not taking care of their kids and they're not being that parent that they need to be. And so that if somebody else comes in and steps in and becomes that surrogate figure,
Is filling that role.
I mean, they're not necessarily their mom or their dad, but they're there helping to shape and support and encourage, and I think that's important. I think that's huge. That's a form of discipleship for for us to be doing and willing to do, because those things aren't easy. It's easier to say, well, golly, I'm sorry you come from a broken home,
right.
come and have dinner with me and then go back. And it's really investing your time and your energy and your love into these people that is going to bear fruit.
Yeah, and I think you used the exact right word to talk about that. And it's different than family, it's discipleship, which may be a higher thing. When you have bad parents or parents that are horrible, or you have an unfaithful husband, the fact that he's unfaithful doesn't mean he's not a husband. He's just a horrible husband. And so you can have families that are very dysfunctional. It doesn't mean they're not families, they're just terrible families. And so I don't think we're arguing about anything. I just think and it's a minor point that I have, I just hate to see us lose the language and lose the understanding of biblically what a family is. Covenantal unit.
I still think all families are dysfunctional because we're sinful people. It's just the amount and the severity of that dysfunction. And I can't get around it. You come with sin, and that sin affects and influences how you perceive things, and if you're not saved, those things just continue to grow and manifest themselves in your family life and in your children, and those things continue and they are perpetuated, and that's a lot of what sin does. And like I say, I think most families have some form of dysfunction. It's just...
Yeah, well, all people really have that going on. There's some amount of dysfunction.
But I think that can get really magnified in a family situation.
Well, you got all these people living together.
They're all crazy.
Well, a family that will remain nameless, there was
Is it us?
I have a friend.
It's been a while ago. I was counseling with a guy, and it really became apparent that he kind of had some mommy issues, and so I tried to summarize what he was telling me. I said, "So you're telling me your mom kind of knows how to push all the right buttons on you?"
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked at me dead serious and said, "She installed those buttons in me." Not only does she know how to push them, but they're there because of her. They're there on purpose. And I just, that reminded your dysfunctional family thing kind of reminded me of that.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, the other worldview theme that I saw that was pretty evident was having to do with redemption or atonement.
Yeah.
And we do have several characters during the movie who are seeking something to make it better, or it's not spiritual atonement, and it's definitely not Christian redemption or anything, but that's a pretty prevalent theme in our culture, that if you do one bad thing, then you need to do something good to balance it out, and that's kind of the natural religious idea of man.
Right.
And of course we know in the gospel you can't do that. Your good works don't balance out your bad works, and only the works of Christ are going to atone for you.
Yeah.
But still in a more horizontal way, in person-to-person dealings, throughout the Bible, the touchstone of ethics and justice is restitution, which does involve paying it back when you can.
Right.
And if you've caused harm, you do what you can to fix it. If you've caused loss, you're the one responsible for paying for that loss.
Well, and it's not just paying it back.
And you have to provide the extra to
It's
compensate.
exceeding.
Yeah, right.
Nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah.
I'll make us even, but
Right.
that's all I'm going to do.
200% redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see that Jesus commends that sort of thinking even in the New Testament, when Zacchaeus falls out of the sycamore tree. Well, it doesn't fall, but
Climbs down.
he climbs down, and Zacchaeus is obviously overcome with a spirit of repentance, And his repentance then is that he's going to vow to pay back anything that he's defrauded, and 4 times over he's going to pay back and give half of what he has left after that to the poor. And Jesus said, just by him saying he's going to do this, Jesus announced, redemption has come to this one, or salvation has come to this child of Abraham.
Right.
And so I do think it's a right and good thing. If you know that you have caused injury or pain, there may not always be something you can do about it, but maybe the only thing you can do is go and confess your sin and own up to it and come clean. But a lot of the time you may really need to restore what you took, if it's material or something like that. And so in this movie, I feel like we have redemption being preached a lot, or the quest for redemption. Especially, I saw it with Yondu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And frankly, I didn't like that part of the plot. I didn't think it was written very well. I appreciated what they tried to do.
Sure.
But the whole idea with the Ravager code and how he busted the code and how he's exiled now, or
I guess he's not allowed.
Or,
That's what it looked
they've
like.
excommunicated him.
Right. And then
Because they wouldn't do that, really, would they?
Well, maybe if they're real serious about the code, they seem to care more about
It's
the
not.
code than like a pirate does, because that's just
guidelines. Really.
Suggestions.
Right.
The Ravager code, that's
But
some real stuff.
What he did,
they're
though,
serious.
if what he did was take those kids to Ego and everybody knew what was going on, then,
That is bad.
I can see him saying, like, you're not part of our group.
Yeah.
But really, the Ravagers are upset about things like kidnapping and human trafficking and stuff like that.
Only if it results in death.
I don't know, because it seems like from what we saw just sort of Peter doing in the first movie when he was just sort of ravaging at the very beginning, he was just going and taking something that, was
He's
on this
just
completely dead
heaving.
planet,
Yeah.
where it didn't obviously belong to anyone, just left behind in this old ruin.
Right.
It's just like an archaeological...
Indiana Jones in space.
Well, but just like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's, it's not really anybody.
He wasn't
It's just
harming
been left
anybody.
behind, yeah.
Well, so I like the story of Yondu here because there are a couple of scenes where he comes clean and confesses that he wasn't always the way he should have been.
Yeah. And I like that it's been something that is like kind of hurting him, like it's sort of torturing him on the inside that he's been this way.
Right.
Like that's kind of
that's a real
nice.
thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. People who actually have a conscience, sometimes that happens.
So I appreciated that. I appreciated that kind of attention to how he was dealing with these feelings.
I just didn't feel like the Ravager code part of the story was all that well done. Because in one scene you have Rocky Balboa telling him, no, you're out for good and you'll never be one of us. And then the next time we see those guys, they're celebrating his redemption and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Well, but that was all extreme in how that happened as well. Had he just, fallen off a cliff, no one's going to show up for that. You have to look at the context.
well, how did they know, though? It seemed like it was
They
very
sent out a
quick.
message.
Yeah, somebody
They
sent
sent out
out
a message
the
saying what
message to all
happened.
those guys. Who was it? Somebody did.
Yeah, a
If
message
it was
was
Rocket
sent
or
out, and they
someone.
weren't expecting anybody to be there. They thought it was just going to be them, and then
Yeah.
suddenly,
I think it was Rocket or that other guy, that other Ravager guy sent this
maybe
message
the other
to
guy,
all the other
little
people
lackey
just
guy.
to let them know, hey, this is what's gone down.
yeah,
But I
Yeah.
can't remember who it was. Somebody
Alright.
sent out a message.
we'll have to watch it again.
So I guess we have to watch it again now.
Well, I'm just saying that was my impression watching it. It just seemed like that whole story arc was very short.
Yeah, it could have been more
radical. Yeah.
more well handled.
We only got so much time. You know about that.
Well,
That's right.
I know.
That's right. Maybe a couple less baby Groot scenes.
No.
No,
you
you gotta
can't do
keep
that.
those in.
We need
those.
more, not less.
Yeah, I want to see.
I
what
want a
they
big
cut.
Groot movie.
Well, now here's the thing that was on my mind. This was good as a standalone movie. It was good as as a sequel to the first one.
Uh-huh.
But I'm thinking more Marvel Cinematic Universe here, and anybody that's paying attention knows we're headed toward Infinity Wars
Right.
with Thanos and the gemstones.
The Infinity Stones.
Yeah, and so, but my one thing that I was left puzzled in the movie is how does that plot advance now? I'm not sure that how it
Nebula's
does.
going
Well, I think
after
it's got to be the Nebula angle, because she's still gunning for
She's still, yeah.
Thanos.
She wants to kill Thanos, and so she's gonna go out and like poke the bear or something.
Yeah.
Well, she's
feel
gonna
like-
try to kill the bear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm not an expert, but I think that there's some kind of plot line in the comics where Nebula like goes crazy and I think she might have killed Thanos. See, I don't know anything really for real, but I think that that's been a major sort of plot line, is the Nebula
So-
Thanos thing. So if they wanted to,
That's kind of set up in this
yeah,
one.
that
She's-
has kind of been set
Yeah,
up.
She
she's
still has her
obviously taken
sights.
off to go get
Yeah.
him, but well,
So it could just be some
Alright.
And then
something like
maybe
that.
Gamora gets pulled in because she's got to go see about her sister.
oh, I'm sure.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So I don't know.
that would be more of a Carmen question.
Yeah, that's more of a carbon thing. I think that that's something, but I don't know.
Well, all right. I'll accept that answer for now. Did we find out anything special in the after credits scenes? Man, scenes plural.
Yeah, like 3.
That was out. I don't think they should do that.
That's outrageous.
Wait till the credits are over.
They had
do
like
your-
a pre-credits
do your
scene
one scene.
and a mid-credit scene and then the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not sure we learned
It's a
very
lot.
much in any of those, did
Yeah, I can't even remember what all of them were. There was the Teenage Groot one,
we? Teenage Groot.
and there
yeah.
was it Stanley and those
Yeah.
those
Oh,
Watcher guys
Stanley and the Watchers.
and
But nothing that didn't
no,
do
nothing
anything.
that was
Yeah.
like.
But you know he's got to be in the movie somewhere.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I
and you
thought
know-
that was really funny because I've seen stuff about the Watchers online and about this whole like fan theory
You're
about
right.
what if Stan Lee is actually in the movies. He's playing the part of a Watcher. Because I guess all they do is just. They're
Observe.
just observing what's happening and
That's
to the
it.
heroes, and that's sort of like, okay, I could see it. And then he showed up there, and I was like, nice, it all came together.
Well, speaking of that, the first time we saw him with the Watchers was when they're jumping from place
Right.
to place.
Yeah.
The first place that they jump to, something happened there. There's an Easter egg in there somewhere, I'm sure. And it happened so fast, I don't think I caught what it was. But it almost looked like maybe it was Thor and the Hulk
Oh, really?
in
I didn't-
that battle.
I missed that.
I
place.
completely would have missed. We have to watch it again, I guess.
Right.
I told you.
Dang it.
I
at
don't,
least-
I don't know. It was a very fast thing, and I thought,
Huh.
wait
You know,
a
that's
second.
funny that you see that, but the's like all this other stuff that was on the screen a while that.
Right.
Like whole lines.
and I can never find a hammer here at home or scissors. I can never find.
Expand the list, brother.
Oh boy. That's interesting though. That's kind of cool.
So we'll see. Yeah. So I think we're all agreed it was a good movie, and frankly, as far as the thematic content and the things that kept on getting pushed in the movie, I was kind of happy with all those messages. There wasn't anything, super pagan. I mean, the background of the whole movie is going to be Marvel Universe evolution,
Yeah.
paganism, but the thematic moral lessons that they're trying to teach in the movie, I thought were all pretty decent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not offensive, at least.
Yeah.
I could get behind a couple of them.
And you could stay awake, and that was really good.
I made it through.
Nice.
I made it through.
Did you cry?
No, I didn't
No,
cry.
I didn't.
I didn't cry either.
Did your eyes get
No,
watery?
no, I could
Nothing.
tell as I was watching it that it
That
was
was
sad
coming,
and
yeah.
it was emotional, and I was like, oh, this is sad. And I knew that people around me were crying.
And you said, oh.
Ah.
User.
Oh boy.
All right, y'all. We should probably wind up the old podcast here. Ride off into the sunset. Wait.
I thought we were in a spaceship in his room.
Well, we jumped to a more Western-style planet, and now we're riding
That was
off.
funny, all those jumps.
Yeah.
That was funny.
And the distorted faces.
Yeah. There were some good times in this movie,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Good
Pretty
movie.
cool movie. If you
So I
haven't
say
seen
go
it,
watch it.
if you haven't seen it, it's there's a lot worse trash on than that. So
And there wasn't really any language or
right,
like excessive skin, except for Drax. Not a
Yeah.
lot of skin.
he's always shirtless, but I mean,
But
there
he's
was
got all
nothing-
those cool tattoo things.
Yeah.
So that's like a shirt.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, goodbye.
We want to encourage the creative Christians who hear these things. The whole reason we're doing it is try to analyze and see how it is that morality and lessons and thematic things and biblical worldview things can actually be preached in a story without being preachy and without being terribly in your face obvious about it. And it would be helpful if Christians got good at doing that.
That's
So
right.
go out there and get it done.
Dominionize.
Dominionize.
I was just thinking.
Well, you should have said it.
Well, you owe me a quarter, each one of you, for saying
No, I
it.
didn't say
Oh,
that.
no.
Oh,
You
yeah.
thought it, though. That's like a half a quarter.
Bye.
Intellectual property. All right, see y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.